the devil's family burned to death. A very touching and scary story told by an older brother. This is a true story. I am the one who experienced this story. I would like to change the address without specifying it, so as not to affect people living in that area, so please don't ask for the address. There are a few additional details in the story to describe the scene to make it more interesting and make it easier for you to imagine, but the rest is completely non-fictional. It happened in 2011. At that time I had just returned from Thailand to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and had some money in hand from that side to use as business capital. Just arrived in Vietnam and my hometown is outside Hai Phong, so the first thing is to find a place to live and then find a job. After many days staying at a budget motel and wandering around several districts in the inner city, I found a small house in an alley in the middle of District 10. The house seemed a bit old, but cheap and still seemed very clean. After meeting the landlady and talking a few stories, the landlady said to wait 1 to 2 days to prepare more contract documents, then would contact me again. During those 2 days I stayed temporarily at a motel nearby, and heard countless stories that the people there told me. They said that the house was cheap to rent but no one could stay for more than 3 days, then there were people in that house who died unjustly, then there were ghosts and demons. As someone who has come into contact with and believes in Buddhism, I became a monk in Thailand for 3 months. I do not believe in ghosts harming people, so I do not listen to those rumors. 2 days later, the landlady invited me to come and open the door for me to see the house. The house is small and beautiful. The interior is still fully furnished including beds, cabinets, wooden tables and chairs, wooden stairs. On the ceiling there is a small hole enough for one person to go upstairs. I looked at the house for a while and saw that although the furniture had an old-fashioned design and seemed old, it was still clean and in good use, so I was satisfied and asked to sign a contract immediately. At this point, the landlady hesitated and said to me, "I'll tell you this story. You've probably heard the neighbors around here talk about this house. Now if you want to rent, I won't stop you, but before signing the contract, you can stay here for about a week. If after 1 week you still want to rent, I will make a contract with you, but if you don't rent, I won't force you." Hearing the landlady say that, I thought a bit, but because I didn't believe it and always had the thought if I don't harm anyone, I'm not afraid of someone harming me, so I nodded immediately and the landlady gave me the house key and didn't forget to tell me that the upper floor is a storage room. It hasn't been cleaned for a long time, so it's dirty and it's locked and can't be used. I didn't pay much attention because I thought I didn't need to go there for anything, so I received the key and started moving in. First day of moving in. When I finished packing my things into the house, I didn't forget to stand in front of the door and say loudly, "I'm from far away, but now I'm lost and have no place to stay." I found this house and asked to rent it to the landlord decent and allowed to move in. So if there is someone in the house who is out of sight, please let them in. The river water does not violate the well water. I am a living person, living without harming anyone and also not offending you. Please ask for the grace to develop virtue so that I can stay there again. Then, he bowed 3 times before entering the house. The first night I slept well and nothing happened. On the second night, I fell asleep very early at 9 a.m., but for some reason, I suddenly woke up at 1 a.m. and couldn't sleep. There was no air conditioning in the house, only one fan, but the air suddenly felt cold like winter. At this time it also started to get windy outside. The wind blew the window upstairs and hit the wall loudly. Combined with the cold in the house, making it impossible for me to continue sleeping. Standing up, reaching to turn on the light and trying to go upstairs to close the window, I realized that the landlady wouldn't be able to get up if she didn't give me the key. Well, I had to put on a jacket to avoid the cold and then try to go back to sleep. I lay down with my eyes closed, trying to forget the sound of the door upstairs so I could go to sleep. The wind outside became stronger and stronger. The wind whistled through the rustling trees and I seemed to stop in my tracks, but mixed in with the rustling sound. There were people talking and children crying. At this moment, time around me seemed to stop. I tried to lie so still that I felt like I didn't even dare to breathe to listen carefully. There was indeed the sound of people talking and children crying. The crying sound was very close but seemed to come from somewhere far away. At this time, I sat up and muttered a few Buddhist scriptures in my mouth, then the sound gradually disappeared. Everything fell into the silent night again, with only the sound of the wind and the rattle of the upstairs window. At this point I was tired and fell asleep. Everything was normal until the next morning. I woke up and saw that it had already dawned. Everything in the house still seems to be normal, nothing has changed or been scary like the neighbors rumored. After finishing my personal hygiene, I picked up my backpack to look for a job and stepped out. I didn't forget to look up at the window last night with the thought of borrowing the key to go up there and close that door tightly, but what was happening appeared before my eyes, making me freeze for a moment. Before my eyes is a closed window covered with moss and locked with a rusty chain. It has never been opened. So last night, what was banging on the wall and where did the crying sound come from? I gave up the idea of looking for a job, and immediately pulled out my phone to call the landlady to borrow the key to the attic to find out what was going on in this house. After ringing twice, the landlady also picked up the phone. After knowing that I wanted to open the attic door, she was a little scared. "You don't have the key to open that lock. It was locked from a long time ago. I also advised you not to open it." "Well, don't stay in that house anymore, honey." The landlady's words made me even more curious, so I told her. "I've never seen anything scary in this house like everyone said. But even if they do, they have a reason to harass them and I will find out what that reason is before I can stop being curious. If you don't have the key, that's it. It's not even been a week since you moved out, so I don't have any intention of moving out yet." After hanging up the phone, I wandered around my neighborhood to see if there was any place that needed to hire workers. It was almost evening when I returned home. Nothing has changed, even though all the surrounding houses have turned on the lights and the workers have returned home from work. The neighborhood is gradually becoming more crowded, but the house is still in a cold gloom, as if it separates itself from this life. I opened the door and entered the house and turned on the light. At this moment I stood frozen at the door, not daring to enter the house. On my bed, for some reason, there are footprints and handprints of children. The stains are dark brown and very clear. I mustered up the courage to step closer and take a closer look, and saw that the marks looked like dried blood stains. I quickly grabbed the mattress and threw it to the ground, and at this moment I was suddenly startled because it seemed like something had just run past me toward the stairs. I turned around and saw nothing. Recite a passage of the Great Compassion Mantra to calm your mind, then get the food ready to cook. At 8 p.m., after eating and drinking, I took my clothes and took a shower. The atmosphere here is quite pleasant in the evening. Stand in the bathroom and play a few songs on your phone to relieve the emptiness. I enjoy every stream of warm water flowing from my head to my feet. Everything seemed normal until while taking a shower, the light suddenly went out. Power off. Probably so, but I can't just run out without wearing anything to check. Reaching out to grab my clothes, I touched something cold, sticky, and sticky. Not sure what it was, but it was only standing about an arm's length away from me. The soft, rough but cold and sticky feeling made me uncomfortable, so I pulled my hand away. Suddenly I remembered that my bathroom was small. Around an arm's length there were only a few walls and certainly nothing like what I just touched. I reached out again, and this time I still touched that thing. When I touched it, my heart felt like it wanted to jump out. I stood under the warm water and my whole body became cold when the thing I just touched was one human head. The first time I touched him, he turned his back to me, but this time he was facing away, so I reached out and touched his face. I screamed and jumped back. My back touched the wall, and at that moment the light turned on again. There was nothing in front of me, just a blank wall. So what is that thing I just touched? Where did it come from, or did I imagine it? I reached for my clothes and saw that my hands were still covered in some light red fluid, and the slimy feeling was still there. At this point I knew I wasn't imagining it. Quickly wash that horrible thing under the tap, then get dressed and go out. Sitting and thinking about what happened, I knew for sure that the problem lay in the upstairs room. How can I open that door to discover everything? Thinking for a while, sleepiness came. The mattress is covered in children's fingerprints and I threw it to a corner, so I'm temporarily resting on the mat tonight. I lay down for a while, then fell asleep. In my dreamy sleep I felt like someone was staring at me, but I couldn't open my eyes to look again. I lay still to see what would happen. From somewhere, footsteps sounded. The sound of heavy footsteps and bare feet, no shoes. While reciting a few prayers hoping to escape this situation, the sound of footsteps came closer and closer. At this moment, not just one but many different footsteps were approaching me, and I also heard whispers talking about something. When I felt those footsteps approaching the bed, I opened my eyes and sat up. Sweat poured down like a shower. I looked around but saw nothing. Everything was in darkness and a terrifying silence was suffocating the air around me. Looking at the clock, it was 3 a.m. I turned on the light and walked around the house, stopping at the stairs. On the stairs, covered with a thin layer of dust, there were some very faint footprints. That whole night I didn't sleep. Sitting on the bed, looking towards the small attic and saying loudly, I know that in this house I am not the only one. You are dead people, people of the underworld. I am people of the positive world. The yin and yang are not same way, no trespassing, so why are people harassing me? How can a dead person not go through reincarnation and reincarnation yet still stay and harass people on earth to create more karma? If I am here, if you have anything you don't like or have any wishes for, just say it directly so I can take care of it. But causing trouble like this creates more karma and won't solve anything. Then I meditated and chanted until morning. The next morning I called to inform the landlady that I would find a way to break the lock so I could go upstairs to find out what was going on and go find a locksmith to break the lock. But when I went to the locksmiths around there and asked to open the lock of the house I was living in, they all shook their heads and refused. I had to go buy a hammer and break the lock myself. After struggling all morning, I finally solved the rusty lock. Stepping into the attic, the first thing I saw was a not very large space. Dust sticks to a thick layer on the floor and furniture. Even though it was midday and the sun was hot outside, the air in this attic was still strangely gloomy and cold. I walked up to the attic and took a look around. Upstairs there was a small altar. On the altar there were 5 bowls of cold incense but no pictures or tablets. Dust and cobwebs covered the altar. In the corner of the room were scattered old furniture and the window was locked from the inside with a huge chain. I took the hammer and cracked the lock and opened the window. At this moment, life seemed to rush in with light, making the attic no longer as gloomy as before. I went out to buy some fruit and a bunch of incense, then went up to clean up the altar, put things on the altar and lit 3 incense sticks and said loudly, "I don't know who this place worships, because I don't see an altar image or a sacred object, but once I'm up, I take the liberty of cleaning up and lighting incense to show my sincerity and hope that the invisible person can testify. I am a Buddhist and do not offer salty food, so I have some vegetarian food and hope people won't criticize me." After that, he bowed 3 times before going downstairs. That night I slept very early. From the time I came down from that upstairs, I went out until 9 p.m. and didn't see anything strange. At 2 a.m. while sleeping, I heard a small noise next to me. Open your eyes and see nothing. I thought to myself that maybe it was a mouse or something, so I didn't pay attention, and closed my eyes, but at this moment I felt a hand grab my wrist and pull hard. I sat up startled. Looking towards the end of the house, I saw a dark shadow standing and looking towards me. When I turned on the light, I couldn't see that person anymore. I turned off the light and saw it again and it seemed like that person was waving me back. At this point, many people will probably tell me why I don't run away or don't follow or else the devil will capture my soul. To be honest, I really wanted to throw the door open and run. But before that, if you told them what you want or need, just say so now they probably want to show you whatever they want. I stood up, put on a shirt and walked towards that dark shadow. That person climbed up to the attic and signaled me to follow. When I climbed more than halfway up the stairs, my head was higher than the floor of the attic. I looked up, screamed and fell backwards downstairs. In that attic there was not just one but 5 to 6 dark shadows, big and small. I fell down painfully and thanks to that I realized I wasn't dreaming. Everything that happens is real. So who are they, and why are they here, or are they this homeowner and they were killed? Many questions appeared in my mind and there was only one answer: you have to go there to get everything answered. Gathering all my courage, I walked up. They were still there. 6 dark figures stood in the attic and they seemed to be looking towards me. I stopped for a moment to explore and let my eyes get used to the darkness. Because I opened the window in the morning, the moonlight now shone in, making the attic a little brighter, and also allowing me to see them clearly. 4 adults and 2 children, they seem to be a family and there is also a child who can't walk yet. I raised my voice to break this deadly silence. I don't know who you are and what you mean by appearing here, but since we are destined to meet you, if you can tell me what your wishes are, just tell me. The 6 shadows remained silent and then one of them pointed towards the altar. Not understanding what happened, the baby among them crawled towards me. It was a bit surprising, but it crawled so fast that I didn't have time to react. It was right under my feet. Now it was close and thanks to being used to the darkness, I could see it clearly. I was a little startled and took a few steps back because at my feet was a baby that did not have a human form. It was as black as a lump of coal, as if its body had been burned black, and on that black body there were bloody cracks that looked very painful. I immediately asked, "So the whole family is like this, baby? Is everyone burned to death?" All 6 people nodded. I also silently walked near them and meditated. They didn't do anything to harm me, and I fell asleep without even realizing it. In my sleep, I saw 6 of them appear with the same appearance as when they were alive. 6 people are a family: grandparents, parents and 2 children. One is 8 years old, the other is 3 months old. They said that during the war against America, they were suspected of hiding for the Liberation Army, so American soldiers and informers locked the door of their house and set it on fire, burning the whole family to death in agony. Then the house was taken care of by relatives and then rented out in peacetime. They had no intention of harming anyone, but because they died unjustly, the death was too painful, so the soul could not escape. Their relatives took the photo back to their hometown, but the soul could not leave this house, and when they died with their bodies burned black, so now they always have to stay in that form. Now their wish is to be reincarnated to live another life. The next morning I woke up to find myself lying on a mattress, and the mattress had been carefully and cleanly spread out on the bed ever since. I ran upstairs and saw that the coat I wore yesterday was still up there, so everything wasn't a dream. I lit 3 incense sticks on the altar, then I went to a large temple in District 10, asked to meet the monk and told him the story of that family. After listening to the story, the teacher agreed to send them to the temple to listen to Buddhist scriptures every day so that they could soon escape. I went back to talk to the landlady and told her to bring their relics or photos to that house. Then asked the monk to perform a ceremony for them to take refuge in the relics and photos to bring them back to the temple. After finishing everything, I packed my things out and prepared to go home. The landlady also wanted me to stay and take care of the house for her, because she was old and couldn't move around to clean and take care of it. I refused and decided to go back to my hometown and not stay here anymore. Carry your backpack and look back at the house. 5 days there felt like 5 years. Looking back, I saw that it was no longer gloomy and cold like before. Everything seemed to be filled with vitality. I smiled and walked away, and it seemed like I saw their silhouettes with beautiful shapes like when they were alive. That little family stood in front of the house still holding hands with me. The story ended like that. Demons are impermanent. They are real, but not everyone can meet them. According to Buddha's teachings, when a life dies, it takes only 3 seconds to be reborn into another life. But there are beings who die with resentment and attachments so heavy that they cannot walk. They are stuck in the human world. They cannot be human and cannot be reincarnated, causing them to repeat the same moments and scenes over and over again. Funny when they die. That is many times more painful than death. Demons cannot harm people, only humans can harm people. Therefore, ghosts are more pitiable than fearful. And this is the end of the story. Everyone who listens to the story finds it interesting. Please give me 1 like and 1 sub.